It's just 2 hours. Oh, it is 2 hours, right? Hour and a half.
Don't tell people what you don't know.
No. Where would I start? Thank you, James. The ball's in your court.
Thank you, Chair. Kia ora koutou. So today, you know me, James, and you know Fars, who's our Program Manager for Ngākau Civic Square, and you know Yeston, who's our Manager of most of our structures. Also with us in the gallery there, we have some of our engineers who've been advising us throughout actually our journey in work in Civic Square. So we have Scott from RCP, and I think you probably know Scott. He did the review of the Town Hall in 2023, which enabled us to get to a point where we're now making good progress on the project. Tessa, an engineer from Oricon, and Chin, an engineer from Tonkin and Taylor. So I just wanted to make a couple of introductory comments before we get into the presentation, but you can rest assured we'll get through the presentation as soon as we can so that we can go to questions. Okay, so earthquakes are a fact of life in New Zealand, and fortunately we're aware of this and we're prepared for it. Living with this risk means we take a really keen interest in what happens to the ground that we live on when an earthquake happens. We study and we learn from our experiences with earthquakes, and we apply that knowledge to the geotechnical engineering of our built structures. After the 2011 Christchurch earthquake, renowned American geologist Robert Yates said that earthquake killed 185 people and injured 7,000 people. And he said most cities in the world would be totally flattened by such acceleration. The peak ground acceleration was up to 2.2 times gravity in that 2011 earthquake. He went on to explain that New Zealand, fortunately, has some of the strongest building codes in the world, and those building codes are respected, as in we actually adhere to them. 15 years ago, in 2009, an earthquake-prone building notice was issued on the Town Hall, the first structure in Te Ngākau Civic Precinct to require significant attention. Te Ngākau, as a complete entity, was in essence compromised at that point. In 2013, both the Town Hall and Capital E were closed to the public for remediation following the Seddon earthquake, which caused damage to 35 buildings in the CBD in Wellington. In 2016, CAB was closed due to damage sustained in the Kaikoura earthquake, an earthquake when 21 fault lines ruptured, shifting parts of the South Island 5 metres closer to the North Island. Despite the 2016 Kaikoura quake being 200 kilometres away from Wellington, and with the ground acceleration of 1G, v the 2.2G featured in Christchurch in 2011, numerous other buildings in Wellington were subsequently demolished due to damage from this quake, including Statistics House, Shed 35, BNZ Centreport, Defence House, the Reading Cinema Car Park, part of Queensgate Mall, Rivera House, and 61 Molesworth Street. The Central Library, our most popular community site, was closed in 2019, also as a result of the Kaikoura earthquake. This critical piece of community infrastructure will finally reopen in 2026. Mob was closed in 2019, also having suffered from the Kaikoura earthquake, and will be demolished as the cost of remediating this building is not financially feasible for council. The Christchurch, Seddon and Kaikoura earthquakes provided significant additional scientific knowledge about the characteristics of the ground we live on and for the engineering of earthquake-resilient structures. Earthquake geotechnical engineering practice guidelines were updated and are being applied, and this is particularly important for Wellington given our known risks. However, the inconvenient truth from all of this is that there is a very real and significant cost to remediate older structures to ensure they are safe in earthquakes that we know will happen at some point in the future. The first estimate to remediate the Town Hall was $58 million in 2015. In 2017, Council agreed to strengthen the Town Hall for approximately $90 million. By 2023, this cost had increased to $329 million. There's multiple reasons for the increased cost of the Town Hall, but major contributing factors were the poor ground conditions, and especially the reclamation nature of the ground, and the complexity of strengthening a structure that was not designed or built to adhere to current earthquake resilience requirements. In 2021, Council agreed to strengthen Te Matapihi Central Library at a cost of around $200 million. The remediation of these two buildings will cost the city over $500 million. Recently, on a media tour of Te Matapihi, the builder, LT McGuinness, who also built Tākina, remarked how the project would have been so much easier if the old building has been demolished and a new one built, and that Tākina was so much easier as a new build on a site without the same geotechnical challenges. Due to the additional scientific knowledge learnt from the Christchurch, Seddon and Kaikoura earthquakes and updates to the Earthquake Geotechnical Engineering Practice Guidelines, in 23 and early 24, the seismic assessment of all the remaining structures in Te Ngākau was updated and done. Determining the solution for the remaining structures and agreeing a design to bring all the pieces back together into an integrated and functional whole that the public can enjoy is the final set of decisions that the Council now face. Te Ngākau has been partially out of commission and under construction for over 10 years. Remediation work is really expensive. We know a lot more today than we did 10 years ago of the risks from compromised and low resilient structures, and there is a huge public desire to get Te Ngākau back to being a place we can use and enjoy. The team has an optimised, pragmatic and affordable plan to complete this work. What follows is our update. Thank you. God. Okay, so I just talked briefly about the Town Hall, Te Matapihi and the cab mob site. So basically the projects, the projects are both green. Oh, thank you. Particularly on the Town Hall, if you can remember, just over 12 months ago, we were not in a good place with the Town Hall. We did some estimates to the best of our knowledge at the time, and quite frankly, there was some risk involved in those estimates. The team's done a really good job in getting the site back into, I guess, a highly productive state of construction and remediation. And the building is now approaching full seismic resilience state and should be in that status by Christmas. There are a couple of risks that remain. One is, as we talked about in October last year, variations, historical variations, but we think those are resolvable for approximately $5 million. And obviously the West Hall aspect of the Town Hall is reliant on the mob demolition, so making sure that we get on and get that moving, which is, the good news is that that is moving on time and on schedule and has already started. Time-related cost risk is being mitigated by discussions around how we separate out the portions of the remaining work, and we commission that to the construction team. So in essence, we are projecting that the Town Hall will be operationally readier earlier than planned. The current plan is Q1 27. The approved budget was $329 million. We've spent so far $183 million. The forecast is complete within budget, and that's assuming that we are able to achieve an earlier completion date. As I mentioned before, when we did the assessments in October last year, there was some risk involved in that. If we had to work through to Q1 27, it might have actually cost a little bit more. So by bringing the time back, we've been able to make sure that we work to that budget. Te Matapihi is also green. It's progressing really well. The base isolators and the piling is basically complete, and what's called a grand release will happen pre-Christmas, which is when the building's actually settled onto that new foundational structure that's in place. There have been a couple of issues, those all being dealt with within the contingencies, and the intent is to be operationally ready for Q1 26. Budget is $217 million, and so far we've spent $138 million. Also note that in regards to the tenancies of level 3 and 4 of Te Matapihi, we've been informed by NZSO that they're not able to commit. They were going to part occupy level 4. However, there is an opportunity to consider a CCO tenant, which we're working through at the moment. So in relation to cab and mob demolition, cab's done pretty much within time and budget. Mob demolition has started. You've probably been able to see all this. There's a slight delay with treating some asbestos in the window structures, but we remain on schedule. The cab mob site redevelopment is being negotiated with Precinct Properties by Fars and Yeston, and they're making good progress and expect to have something back to you for your decision in February 25. Basement remediation has started. We'll be closing Civic Square in mid-December for that work. It's working that's coming down from the top, so it has to be closed. The plan is to complete that in Q1 26 in line with Te Marapihi. And the gallery remediation is going through contractor engagement at the moment, and the plan is to, and that's obviously you know the gallery's closed, the plan is to complete that in Q1 26 in line with Te Marapihi as well. Thanks, mate. There's quite a lot of detail on this slide. We'll obviously leave these ones with you, but in essence it goes to the timeline that I talked to in my introductory comments. I just bring your attention to 2025. So in 2025, we anticipate finalising the development plan. The development plan that went out with the consultation was a concept plan. So obviously there's a further work to do on that, and we work with a number of different designers, or there's an opportunity for a number of different designers and architects to get involved in the process as we finalise out the concept to a buildable design for the square. The decision on the cab mob site development will come back to you in 2025. We also anticipate being able to bring you information on MFC, so you can make a decision on MFC in 2025. Mob will be demolished, and we will be implementing the bridge and CAPE solution based on whatever decisions you make this week. So in 2026, the intent in Q1 26 is to have the basement and therefore the square complete, the bridge and CAPE solution complete, Civic Square will be able to reopen, Te Marapihi will reopen, and the gallery will reopen. And later in 2026, we anticipate the town hall will reopen as well. And at some point onwards from 2027, the development on the cab mob site will be complete. To open Te Marapihi and Sedley Gallery in 26, work must be completed on the basement and whatever the bridge CAPE solution is. And to open the town hall in 26-27, work must be completed on the basement and the loading dock, and the loading dock is part of CAPE. Thank you. Fast.
Kia ora, councillors. You all know me. My name is Fars. I'm the Programme Manager for Te Ngākau. I'm just going to take you through a brief kind of summary of the paper that we're presenting to you on Thursday, and then we have quite a lot of time for questions. A brief on the consultation summary. We almost received 400 submissions on the development plan and City to Sea Bridge. Around 57% were in support of demolition and basically a new pedestrian crossing and or a new bridge, and then around 39% basically didn't support either of the options. Out of that 39%, some of the submissions were around doing nothing, basically demolition of the bridge, but then do not build a bridge or pedestrian crossing. Some of it was basically they didn't support a demolition of the bridge and building a pedestrian crossing and a new bridge. So basically they said just build a new bridge. So there is a variety of options in the do not support either of the options. And also we received quite a lot of submissions on the development plan itself, which we will summarize and we will bring back to you next year when we are finalizing the development plan. A lot of comments around the greening, around safety, accessibility, and the things that matter to people around the precincts rather than the City to Sea Bridge itself specifically. Going through the process, I tried to simplify it as much as I could. We have a problem, and that problem is that we have a number of structures that are earthquake prone or at risk of earthquakes. The red building that you can see in this diagram is the civic basement, which you made a decision on 12th of September. The blue area is the loading dock, and the yellow area is the capital E. The blue area and the loading, which is the loading dock, and the yellow building, which is the capital E, are one structure, is the capital E structure. The green bit is the bridge, the span of the bridge, and they are structurally separate structures. However, they're functionally interconnected. So two separate structures, but functionally connected because you have to walk on top of one to reach the other one. And then to the left of that diagram, you have that blue area, which is the lagoon seawall. And the grey area is, of course, the road. The former capital E building has a earthquake deadline of 2027 that is extended 2031, which means that 2-3 years before that deadline we have to start that project to finish it by 2031. I'll go back to this point later why we need to consider that. And of course the bridge is not a building, so it cannot be stickered as an earthquake-prone building. However, it has an earthquake problem, so it has brittle piles and is exposed to earthquake risks, and that's something that we need to consider. And regardless of how much review of regulatory frameworks we do, that problem will not go away. That problem stays under that bridge until we fix it. We either fix it by removing the problem or we strengthen it. So to address all these issues and problems, we consider a number of options. Option 1 and option 2 are the one that we consulted on. Option 3 is the option that we considered, and it was around $19 million to $120 million, depending how you design it. And we considered that as not a reasonably practicable option to put into consultation, considering that we couldn't afford it from the first place. And through the consultation process, we received proposals and suggestions, so we took them seriously, we listened to people, and we investigated one of them that was most practicable and reasonable, and that's the mid-level strengthening option, around 34%, which came out as $53.3 million solution. There were a number of other solutions that they were not reasonable or practical. And also we have the do-nothing option. The do-nothing option is not basically do-nothing option. There are a number of things that we have to do because we have regulatory requirements on the capital E and the bridge. And again, I explained those further. So going through the options, starting with option 3, which is the most expensive one, is basically strengthening the bridge to almost 100% or a similar equivalent kind of level of IL3 and demolish Cap E and construct a large kind of approach to the bridge. This is the cheapest of the max resilience option. So you can design these structures and strengthen them to even further levels and end up with $120 million or $200 million. But this is the cheapest option that achieves the maximum resilience. The next option is the options that we received through the consultation process, and we try to clarify through these visualizations so everyone can understand exactly what's happening. So we would strengthen the roof of capital E. Is a halfway kind of strengthening just to address the sticker and the safety risks, and then we strengthen the bridge again halfway to 34%, and then we place rocks in the lagoon to strengthen the seawall, and that is the $53.3 million. We haven't considered any improvement to the public space or the surrounding areas. This is just purely mid-level strengthening solution, which comes at $53.3 million. The next option is basically doing what is perceived as the bare legal minimum that we need to do, and that's demolishing capital E because it has a regulatory deadline, demolishing it, building basically another capital E almost the same size, and that cost around $60 million. However, that doesn't remove the risk of the bridge, which we have other legal requirements to deal with. The next option is number option 2, which is basically demolishing the bridge, capital E, building a new bridge and a pedestrian crossing. And the last option, which is the first option, which is our preferred option, is a pedestrian crossing only, and investigating a new bridge in the future for the future LTPs. And I want to unpack this solution a little bit because it's been criticized significantly. So I want to address some of those criticisms to this solution. The next slide, a lot of my fellow architects talked a lot about these solutions and the attachment and architectural values of the bridge. However, no one mentioned these two reports that we've done. One is Gill report from 2004 and one is Gill report from 2021, which are quite heavily referenced in other cases, but not this time. And the 2004 report, next slide, has this page which relates to the time that Ngākau was open and functioning. And at the time, they did a pedestrian count of the different crossings to the waterfront. And as you can see, the Queen's Wharf pedestrian crossing was the busiest. There's around 1,000 people crossing, while the bridge was around 800. A lot of people criticize the idea of pedestrian crossing that is not accessible or is not as pleasant, while this diagram clearly shows that the Queen's Wharf pedestrian crossing was used more than the City to Sea bridge at the time when the Ngākau was active and functioning. The next slide is there is a section around the Civic Square, which I can read a sentence of it if I find it. Sorry. I think I have. In that kind of red square, it says the Civic Square is an introverted space with rather weak links to the city and lack of visual connection to the water. So when the Danish architect Gale came to Wellington and did study, he heavily criticized Civic Square as it's not working and is not connected to the water and is not connected to the city. And he did a number of diagrams to address these issues. If you go to the next slide, and he provided a solution to improve the connections to the city and to the water. And the options that we are putting forward, of course, is to address the earthquake issues of the bridge, but it addressed many other issues that we are facing in this square. A lot of people argued that the bridge and the steps of the bridge create an amphitheater feel to the square. However, like a normal theater, when there is no show, that theater is left empty. And that is the issue that we have with this square. That bridge has a lot of values, and I do acknowledge the architectural values of that bridge. However, it creates a barrier, it's an obstacle to connect the waterfront to the city. And by removing that, we can address some of those issues, but also we can provide new opportunities to create a different kind of space that improve the quality of Civic Square. It can make it more activated. It can provide more opportunities for young artists and Mana Whenua artists to do new artwork. And also we can recreate some of those qualities that are quite valued and considered with high regard in the current bridge. So those qualities can be recreated. And to kind of put it into the context, I found a few examples that are quite similar to what we're trying to do. Perth, this is Perth, and Perth is not known for its great urban design. But they can, if they can do it, we can do it too. And this is the space that they have created. And it's possible to create spaces that they add grade and they're pleasant and connect people to the water. And Wellington is probably one of the only cities that has the opportunity to connect the city to the water, while many other cities don't have the opportunity. And next slide. And the other city that used that opportunity to connect the central city to the water is Auckland. This is Queen Elizabeth II Square next to Britomart and Commercial Bay. And as you can see on the other side, at the end of this image is the water and ferry terminal. And you can easily see from the square the water and from the water. So when you get off the ferry, you can see the city. And this is an opportunity that we can create here. Next slide. And then I did a bit of a kind of summary of all these options. As you can see, the first option doesn't require any extra funding compared to what we have in the LTP. Option 2 requires $14 million for consideration of a new bridge in the future LTPs. And the option 3, 3A, and 3B requires between $17 million to, I think, 32 or 23 or $48 million. And option 4, which is the do nothing option, So with the do nothing option, we have to strengthen the loading dock of Town Hall, otherwise the Town Hall cannot open. Basically, it doesn't get a code of compliance because the fire egress goes through the Town Hall loading dock, so we have to do that. The other thing is that we have to deal with the capital E in the 3-4 years, so we have to cost that. So whatever it will be, the cost of strengthening or demolishing capital E, we add 3-4 years of cost escalation to that. And also, we have to deal with the bridge. There is no regulatory deadline with that, but it is a problem that is not going to go away. We can pass it on to the next generation, but I think we are not recommending that. And these are all the assessments that we have done. That was just a summary of them. I think we have time for questions. No worries.
We'll start with Councillor Pennant.
Chair, can you just make sure we've got the presentation, because we haven't been sent it?
Absolutely.
Sure.
That would be super helpful. Thank you for your work. So I just want to, James, talk about level of risk. So just looking since 1840, so the 19th century, not the 21st, 489 deaths from earthquakes, as opposed to over 3,000 people from every year from air pollution, mostly cars, 300, 400 people dying on the roads. Why have you prioritised this risk so highly? What literal risk do you think there is in the bridge, either like coming down on a car when or a few cars or someone's walking on it?
So I think that's why I use that quote from Robert Yates, the Emeritus Professor, American geologist, when he said, the kind of earthquakes that we do experience in New Zealand, which we know we will experience in Wellington, are often quakes that would flatten most cities in the world. And he then said, actually, why does it not happen as badly as in other places of the world? Because New Zealand has some of the strongest building codes, and we respect those codes. In other words, we pay attention to them. Those codes are constantly being revised based on new scientific knowledge that we learn from various different earthquakes. It's not my job to price a life, but ultimately, if the structure fell down and there were people underneath it, or there were people on it, or there were people in capital E, there would be almost certainly death and injuries, and I can't tell you how many there would be.
So that's for now. FARS. I really struggle with this idea that an at-grade crossing with 6 lanes of traffic, most of which will be polluting, burning fossil fuels, is a pleasant environment. So can you just talk to me a little bit, as a pedestrian, why that is a good experience, given we talk about pedestrian refuges from cars, and why this is a superior solution to a bridge? Thank you.
There's 2 aspects to the pedestrian crossings. Again, with the diagram that we showed from the Queen's Wharf, it's quite visible that Queen's Wharf is used more than the bridge, even when the Ngākau Square was quite active. That's the first thing, mainly because people can see they have a motivation to go on the other side of the road. Even that road, crossing that road is not very pleasant. They can see what's happening on the other side from both waterfront coming to the city or from the city going to the waterfront. And that creates kind of an attraction for people to move around, creating kind of a access from Te Papa to the gallery. I think that's quite a strong tourism aspect too. People can visibly see what are they doing. Of course, not having so many different levels helps with accessibility. People can easily cross, and psychologically they can feel that they can easily cross. And the third point that I wanted to make is that with crossing the 6 lane of traffic, one thing that we need to bear in mind, that 6 lane may not stay 6 lane, it may be reduced in the future, and also that
25 years, FARS. 25 years.
I'm still optimistic, and also we can consider that pedestrian crossing can be designed to improve the quality for pedestrians to have a better, including slowing down traffic, using pedestrian refuge and other techniques to make it more pleasant for pedestrians, and also traffic light phasing.
So just last question, but I do point you to the 99 decision on the bypass. I don't understand from a design point of view why you'd wrap a bridge around the Michael Fowler Centre. The whole point of the design of the bridge was to connect the main part of Te Ngākau with the waterfront.
Yeah, so that design that is shown in the images, that's a placeholder, that is not actually a designed bridge. It only shows the location of a new bridge. If there is to be a new bridge, that new bridge will be sitting close to Michael Fowler Centre to keep the views to the harbour and to the lagoon open, so people can see the water, people can have an easy accessible route towards the lagoon.
So it would be near MFC, like sort of next door to it?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. If I could go back on the list. Thank you.
Sure. We've got Mayor Whanau, but just I want a clarification on one point, and that was that I thought somewhere in the papers you said that this was the priority structure in terms of earthquake risk. So of all of the council's various buildings, this is actually the number one problematic situation, basically. Did I read that right?
That is correct. So both Capital E is formally a priority building because it sits next to a priority route, which is a defined route in the Wellington City website. So you can see the priority route, which starts from the port and goes to the hospital and to the airport. And we have only one priority route in Wellington, in and out of it, because the other route goes through the tunnel and we can't send the trucks through the tunnel. So it needs to go through that route. The bridge is not a priority building by legislation. However, the bridge still sits on the same priority route, which is the Joe Whiskey.
Thank you. Whanau.
Thank you for this. So there have been calls from the public and so forth to delay the decision. So I'm really keen. I asked you this on Monday and you made some really good points for us. So I'd like you to articulate, delaying a week to February, a year, what impact that could have, not so much on the safety, more the any cost escalation and the impact on the rest of the project. And for example, what would the impact be if we waited for the MFC decision so that it was a part of one plan?
So in terms of delaying the decision for 6 months, that can have actually quite significant impacts on a number of things. It actually gets really complex. If you delay the decision for 6 months, that means cost escalation. That's quite common. The delay on the projects of this scale would lead to cost escalation. The other key thing is that we still need to start the town hall loading dock for the town hall to open, or we have to delay the opening of town hall, which means, again, cost escalation not on these projects but on the town hall project. So that's one thing. The other thing is that, let's say we do the loading dock but we defer the rest of the decision on the Capital E and the bridge. That means that Te Matapihi and the gallery will open and the town hall will open, but then we start this project at a later date. Then potentially, because of the amount of noise and disruption that this project would cause, we have to close those venues again, at least for a few months, to do that work as quickly as possible. So the amount of disruption that it would create for other buildings within the vicinity will be significant. While if we do it, and the reason we want to do it as fast as possible, regardless of what's the decision, is that we use the period of construction on all these projects to get this one done, so we can open them knowing that it doesn't have impact on other projects. I can ask Scott from RCP to elaborate on.
So Faz has covered that pretty well, but I mean, from our perspective, the town hall's really the key impactor. So using the loading dock to allow NZSO to get into the basement is really key. Noise from all the demolition works is also an impact to NZSO and NZSM who are using the town hall. We've also got other projects that are finishing, like the civic basement that you guys approved earlier in the year. So all of those are all interlinked, and ensuring that they flow in a logical way will make it much easier and potentially somewhat cheaper to do them as a collective group.
Maybe the other point that needs to bear in mind, again, is a significant cost in a small projects, but in a bigger project still is a significant cost, is the cost of mobilization and demobilization of sites. We create a construction zone, and then we have to clean it, and then we have to establish that construction zone again. This is an absolute nightmare and is very expensive. and it has a lot of disruption for businesses, for the residents, and we prefer not to do that because it causes a lot of upset in the community around the Te Ngākau. They already are very frustrated with the length of the construction project.
One more question. So the intention by looking at that timeline, so if we proceed with the bridge demolition, that essentially the civic square, except for the town hall, is intended to be done by 2026, and if we delay the project, it could go beyond that. Is that what is that correct?
That's absolutely correct, yes.
Yeah, I'll have 2 rounds, but I just wanted some Te Ngākau general ones. I just want to check, so with the deal with Precinct on mob and cab, my understanding is that would reduce the town hall budget by around $20 million by them building facilities. I just want to make sure that is still the case.
Yeah, that's correct. We had that option as part of the $329 million, I think it was $28 million that was potentially required for the front of house facilities. And that was dependent on what we were able to discuss with Precinct Properties and negotiate with them, yep.
Of course, that's the money we've flagged for water by amendment. And I saw there was a decision point for the Michael Fowler Centre in 2025, but given the government's currently under earthquake-prone building review, what's the status of that going to look like?
I might ask Scott to answer that one, but from a completely layman's perspective, it all depends on what that advice is, obviously, yeah. and when it comes through as to what that means in regards to the MBS standards, etc., that we're required to work to. The structural capabilities of the building obviously won't change by any change in legislation, but maybe the actions or the time we've got to take those actions may change, but maybe Scott can talk to that.
Cool. So the first point on the MFC, there's obviously a piece of work to do next year to work out what the best actions are going forward from this point. We haven't really focused on that while we've been focusing on the bridge, so that's the first question. In terms of what's coming in the earthquake-prone building review, I think that's up to anyone's interpretation. The terms of reference have been set out, but I mean, it's very difficult to know what they will and won't implement. It's going to take a long time for that legislation to be put together. I mean, they haven't even had their first meeting of the review panel, so that's still a while away.
So are we going to make a decision before all that work's done? Like if that work's not done in 2025, we won't have a 2025 decision point?
Yeah, we would. So the intent is to do options analysis basically for the building and present that back to council.
All right, back on the list, please.
Actually, could I just get a clarification point on the NBS tends to actually change over time. Is there any reason to believe that we're actually in a period now where NBS is going to be sort of fixed ad infinitum, or is there a high probability that the standards will continue to actually evolve and rise?
Will the engineers answer that?
Kia ora. I think, nobody has a crystal ball to gaze into the future to understand this. And there are some proposed changes to the guidelines that we know are coming. We don't anticipate that they will bring the current assessed ratings out of the sort of below 34% rating that they're currently sitting in because of the mechanisms that we see within these two buildings. The other change that's potentially happening is change to the seismic hazard. That change is increasing the seismic hazard that we currently see. Current MBIE advice is that the earthquake-prone and existing building standards will remain pegged to the old seismic hazard. So they will not, the standard for which our existing buildings are measured against will not be changed. And that's the current advice.
So my question is, if we must urgently make a decision now, and you know this was there since 2019. Why we need to make a decision now urgently? Why nothing has been done until now?
So I try to cover a little bit of that in the introductory remarks. So there's been, we've known about structural issues around the structures in this precinct, well, since 2009, basically. And I guess my point of identifying the earthquakes that have happened since that point in time is that it's a constantly evolving process of learning more about the risks, and making an assessment as to how and when we need to respond to those risks. And that's really, I guess, something for you as governors to consider. Our advice is, since this team, in essence, that's on the Ngākau program now, which originally started off as the Tamarapihi team and kind of pulled together the town hall team from that, and we've constructed the program team around that using the same engineers and designers, etc., that we've had on those other two buildings, generally speaking, through the rest. As this team has gotten across the broader risks and done the assessments, which we did in the 2023-24 period, we've moved as fast as we could, quite frankly, given all of the milestones and deliverables that we've had and we've committed to, and the funding that's been available. And I think it's probably fair to say that funding that's been made available is pretty big and pretty substantial and is a significant cost for the city. So bearing all those things in mind, we've tried to create a plan to optimise the investment that's being put into the square, the resources that are deployed, the mobilisation that Far spoke to before, and we've come up with a plan that enables us, an optimised network plan that enables us to get through the rest of the work. We're now fully aware of all of the risks and get through the rest of the work in a way that enables us to minimise cost and impact from this point forward. So I guess that's my long answer to your question.
My second question is, in the agenda paper, page 40, it says the capital E NBS is 15%. And in this paper, which is in 2019, it says 20%. Why that has changed?
Sorry, I think the paper is an error. It's 20 to 25. That's the formal.
So
sticker.
The paper is
an error.
Okay. My other question is related to the consultation paper itself. In the report, you said 57% of people supported the demolition, and in the consultation, there is nowhere where it asks people the option of not demolishing.
The reason for that, the strengthening option was extremely unaffordable, and we believe that it is not a very honest way asking people for a solution that we cannot afford, and that was the $90 to $120 million solution.
I get that, but what I'm asking is, if there was no option given to the community whether they want demolition or not, how do you justify 57% supporting the demolition when there was no option of asking the other way around? I'm asking officers who are councillor.
The consultation plan was the one that we went through and was approved by council, and that was the consultation that went out. And so what we were reporting on are the responses to that consultation.
No, I'm not asking. What I'm saying is, if 57% of people are... Yep.
Sorry, we signed it off, so if you want to move on to another question, that would be handy. You've got three questions.
I'll go to the next question. We do not have our own engineer, we have planners, and why all this opposition from other engineers, and we are listening to only the one that we contracted to? What is the legal requirement, and what is your justification for other engineers who just putting their actually credibility online and doing a lot of the submission as well?
So I think we've said in the documentation, we've consulted with quite a lot of different engineers around this particular aspect of Te Ngākau. So we have, I guess to address that kind of thought, we have gone out to multiple engineers and we've peer reviewed the engineering advice, and we have sought options that we could then take through our engineering team to test and validate and size, and that's what we've presented back to you. So I feel that we are not stuck listening to just one engineer. We have actually gone out and done exactly what is pragmatic and prudent in this situation. And I guess one of the things that we learnt from the experience with Te Matapihi and the debate that was happened between engineering firms on base isolators v fluid viscous dampers, we followed a similar process where we went out and we got alternate perspectives and we got peer review, and that process was challenged to the Auditor General, and it was upheld as being a credible and robust process. So that's why we've done what we've done.
Put me back again on the list.
Councillor Free.
Thank you. During the course of consultation, there was a lot of commentary from our submitters about why, the bridge isn't a building, so why is it even in this situation of being declared, prone? I wanted to ask you about the IL3 status of the bridge, because I understand I'm asking you to sort of elaborate a little bit on the why it needed to be considered as similar to a building and given some sort of,
I'll ask Tessa to come and talk to this, and then I elaborate further if needed.
Thank you.
So the bridge was assessed against our loading standard, and under that loading standard, the criteria for IL3, for which the bridge complies with, is that it has a capacity for a crowd of at least 300 people. And that's the basis under which the IL3 designation was made for the assessment.
So would it be correct to say that the bridge functions as a bit of a gathering space rather than just a plain sort of access way?
When you look at the original design intent and the design calculations for the bridge, it was originally designed for crowd loading.
Okay.
So for that crowd type use.
Okay. I don't know if anyone can answer this question, but I think Councillor Pannett made a point about the lack of deaths from earthquakes. But would it be fair to say that we've been lucky? There have been some situations that have happened with collapsing roofs and collapsing buildings that haven't caused deaths, but would it be fair to say we've been lucky?
Yes, I think that would be fair. Yep. When you look at buildings like Statistics House and the lack of any fatalities or injuries in that building, yes.
Yeah, that was certainly the case in the reports that were done afterwards on Statistics House. It was said quite clearly that if it had happened at a different time of day, almost certainly there would have been injuries and deaths as a result.
Okay, thank you.
I'd just like to add, I think that was the point you were making before about the American who observed that the reason New Zealanders had a relatively small number of fatalities is their high building standards, which have been enforced. But what's actually happened out of both Christchurch and Kaikoura is that the standards have been changed. At Wellington Airport, for instance, a floor of the car park building that was under construction at the time collapsed in exactly the same way as Stats House. And it was just because of the time of day. So the standards have been changed because people have learned.
Thank you.
Councillor Calvert.
Thank you. Just about some information. Just in terms of the GEL report, that was done by Let's Get Wellington Movings, wasn't it, in 2021?
The 2021, but the ones that I showed is from 2004 when the Ngākau was open.
Yeah, okay. Well, you talked about peer review. Now, I understand from an engineering perspective, sometimes peer reviews are not what the common layperson might think they are. In engineering terms, they can be a peer review just on the solution being provided and not necessarily peer reviewing other solutions. So can you just explain what sort of peer review this the square or the City to Sea bridge had?
So we have done the DSA, the detailed seismic assessment on the bridge. We have done a geotech assessment of the bridge, and then we have got Becker to peer review both the DSA, so the structural side of Becker peer reviewed the structural DSA, and the geotechnical side of Becker has done a peer review of the geotechnical report, which is done by Duncan and Taylor. And then we have separate kind of process for the design solution. So we have done a peer review of that. Also, we have done peer review of cost estimates. Again, RLB has done the cost estimates. Rawlinson has done peer review of the RLB cost estimates. So,
yeah, I'm just trying to understand though. Do you do a peer review of the proposed solution?
No.
Or you've done it broader than that? Now you just touched on because we've been hearing about a Dunning and Thornton report. Have we got access to that?
So I had a meeting with the team yesterday, so that is again a very similar peer review process. There were a number of assumptions in the Dunning.
Yeah, but can we get it?
I'm hoping that it will be finalised before the Thursday meeting, and I can send it to.
Oh, so it hasn't been finalised, and so we're going to make a decision, but utilising a report that we might not get till Thursday.
So the Dunning-Thornton report again doesn't change the outcome, because Dunning-Thornton report has agreed on the mid-level solution, which we have costed at $53.3 million. So the outcome of that report has been considered. Is just an analysis that there was disagreements between engineers that we had to resolve, which is resolved hopefully today, and then we have the report tomorrow.
Okay, so just one question. Can we, if we delayed this, to enable such reports like that to come in, to be assessed not just by councillors, but also the community, the public who are paying the bills. I mean, if we delayed this decision till February, early February, what is the outcome? What would be the impact?
I think we've already answered that question,
But
Councillor.
we talked about 6 months. I'm talking about a 2-month period over the Christmas period as well, the holiday period.
Yeah, the reason, I think, as we said before, the reason we're working to the schedule is because we've optimised it for the timing. So the expectation all this year has been that we will get this piece of the decision done this side of the end of the year.
Thank you.
Young.
So thank you. I mean, I know this has been horrendously complicated, and I do appreciate the site visit we had under capital E, which was interesting. So I've got a couple of questions. So it's around the town hall and the delivery dock. Is that what you call it, a delivery dock? Yeah. So loading dock. So is one of the problems that the ceiling is too low for the trucks?
No.
So I've been told, because, you know, of course, the whole of Wellington is alive with their theories on this, that the ceiling is too low for the delivery trucks, and that the reason capital E is important is so that trucks can turn around there, because they can't turn around in the loading dock.
No. I think Scott has more information on this, but the net of it is we did do a test with the trucks and they got them down. It's tight, and it's the way that some of the service utilities have been put across the roof. So it may pay for us to move some of those, but trucks have been going up and down there for years and years, so
yeah.
It is tight, but it's
just
works.
need to have good drivers.
Correct.
Probably just to add James' point, there is a couple of things that need to change in there, but they're not majors. They're relatively small things that need to be done, like moving services on the roof.
Okay, thank you. So then, wading through the overwhelming reports, thank you guys. A lot of it was done on desktop analysis rather than whatever you call it, you know, the DSAs. Is that what DSA? Disaster, something like that, whatever?
Detailed seismic assessment, yeah.
So a lot of them done on desktop rather than actually reality, is that right?
That's not correct. I think the geotech assessments are desktop analysis, and I can get Chin to explain how they do the desktop analysis. The desktop analysis, I believe, is based on empirical data that they have from sites or around that specific sites. Can you do one? And specifically around boreholes and, you know, the historical data that they have.
And I think you've done boreholes just recently on capital E, is that right?
Yes.
Hello, I'm Chen from Tonkin Taylor. That's the first step to do a DSA, is to look at what information we have around the sites. And we sort of feel the information if more investigation is going to change the conclusion. But for the City to Sea Bridge, we have so much information around Civic Square. We utilize information from Town Hall and historical boreholes, and we are of the opinion that if we were to do any further drilling at the City Sea Bridge site, it's unlikely to change the conclusions.
But you're going to say it might weaken the bridge more. Just roughly, as someone who knows nothing about this, how deep is a borehole?
They can go as deep as you want. They can go to 100 meters. But the boreholes that we have around the Civic Square range from a few meters to over 20 meters.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Foon.
So I just want to explore a little bit more the decoupling of the removal of the bridge and the town hall loading dock. Like, just, is there a drawing of why these two are so I'm just trying to understand more about why they're so interlinked, but then you've just said that they could be decoupled so that you can achieve what you need to do for the loading dock to get that open in time for the town hall. Yeah, thank you.
So it is possible to decouple the loading dock from the rest. We have to literally cut the concrete of the capital E into half and decouple the loading dock from the rest of capital E, and then do the only work on the loading dock now in order to open town hall. Of course, that it comes with a lot of complexities and risk decoupling these two structures. The other risk that we have, if we decouple that and do one without the other one, when we start working on capital E, we have to close the loading dock again. So again, we put town hall out of function for a period of time that we're doing the capital E, because they are one structure basically.
Estimation, sorry. Do you have a rough estimation if we were to
Just the
decide to do
loading
that?
dock.
Yeah.
Just the loading dock, I believe, is around $5 to $6 million, just doing the loading dock, without the rest.
And so at the moment, that's included in
That's
the
included in all of
demolition
the
site.
options, yeah.
Okay. You had a graph there where you've got quite a nice layout of all of the options and the whys and the how fors. Is that something we could you extend that just to bring in the timelines for they're needing to be looked at, and the IL NBS ratings? Because I think that would be really helpful for the public, just to extend, so you're looking at it all in one go.
Yeah, we can.
Right, thank you. I'll go back on the.
Thank you. And I understand, thanks for getting a wide range of engineering. I note that Dunning Thornton has got a report coming here, and that there are perhaps disagreements between engineers. When this workshop was put forward, I also asked whether the other engineers, Becker, Dunning Thornton and Kestrel, could join us. Why are they not here?
We weren't able to make the arrangements in the time frame for this meeting, unfortunately.
Okay, so does that mean we can still go and meet them if there's arrangements can be done? That's okay with officers?
I don't believe that we have any objection if you want to go and talk to any of the consultants that we use.
Thank you.
But I guess the thing is, when we get advice from consultants, we go through a commercial process of writing a contract. That contract specifies what we're asking for and what the relative legal commitments and liabilities are on both parties associated with that advice. So I think if you were to speak to them, you would need to do so in the context of the commercial arrangements we have with them, and they would need to respond to you within the context of those commercial arrangements as well.
Yeah, no, thanks. You've explained that the option has been lined up such that the preferred option is achievable in the time frame, but if we wanted to strengthen the bridge, it's going to disrupt the time frame. Can you explain why we haven't been brought this decision earlier so that we can consider the options without them all being disrupted, like other options, because we're out of time?
I think, to be fair, Councillor, we've been flagging fairly consistently all year long the elements of our plan and the steps within the plan. So from when we did the detailed seismic assessments through to the market soundings, through to the development plan that we've been working on, and whether it was ultimately leading us to a point where we would come to a decision following public consultation on the City to Sea Bridge as structures within Ngākau. I believe that we have been flagging that for some time this year. So it's not like it's landing at the last minute. It's been highlighted throughout the year in our plans.
Okay, but with all due respect, the officers set the agenda for these reports.
Through the chair, I just look, not just Tony, but people have been laughing at officers, interrupting them, calling into question their credibility, and I would like some tighter cheering, please, because it's not cool, it's not fair, and we need to be showing people more respect. And Tony, I'm just jumping in there because you were the last one to talk back. I know it hasn't been you, but I'm requesting through the chair because I think, it could get serious.
I thought that was okay, actually. I didn't have a problem with that. I mean, but I would like to point out that, Tony, that we do actually set the agenda. We the agenda is rigorously discussed. We have regular sessions to set the agendas, and this has definitely been well and truly timetabled.
Oh, really?
Anyhow, you could go on with your question and answer.
So, sorry, I must have missed that meeting. In terms of the option for strengthening Dock, which I see is actually listed as a cost of $1 million, what would it cost to just strengthen it separately?
So that $1 million is just the construction side of it. We have to add all the contingencies, site preparation, PNGs, all of that add to that, and that's why I believe there is around also the building services, going back to Councillor Young's point around the trucks. So we have to remove the building services, relocate them to address the building services in the loading dock to enable the trucks moving through. So we believe that's around $5 to $6 million isolated project, without the impact of that projects on other projects, because it would have a knock-on effect on other projects if we do delay other projects. While if we do it by itself as part of the bigger projects, which has the bigger contingencies and PNG and all the other cost elements, that's a $1 million as part of the $36 million project, or as part of the $83 million projects. But if you take it out, we have to add contingencies and all the other costs to that one specific small project.
Okay, thanks. I'll go back on the list if this is okay.
Councillor Rogers.
Yeah, you alluded to this a little bit earlier on about the amount of feedback that we had from the community and some of the alternative solutions that they provided. I was wondering if you could talk briefly to the process that you went through in terms of understanding those solutions and investigating some of them.
So one of the solutions that we received was around filling the capital E with sand or concrete or other similar solution to bring the capital E to an acceptable earthquake-prone kind of level, which is above 34%. So we quite quickly knew that the sand idea doesn't work. So we went and actually looked at it from a different angle to see what are other things that we can do to strengthen capital E and the bridge and the seawall to a mid-level or kind of just above the line level. So we had 2 weeks. Quickly we did as much as design as we could to pass it on to our QS, so QS can cost estimate that, and then we can get the QS peer reviewed. So that was a kind of a 3 weeks of a sprint that we went through to make sure that we listen to people, we take their ideas seriously, we design it, we cost it, and we can bring it back to you guys so you can make that decision. But that was the process that we went through. It was an idea by a member of public, and we took it on board and investigated that.
Just want to check the timeline. So, as far as I understand it, the demolition, we agreed to take the demolition costs out of the LTP, and then we went to public consultation after adopting the consultation document.
Just to slightly correct you there, Councillor, initially what we did is when we were going through the LTP preparation meetings and sessions in the 6 or 8 months leading up to 30 June this year, we actually had some extremely high-level estimates on some remediation options. In the end, that was, as you council just decided to take that out and instead only put in a number that would pay for demolition, and that was stated in the LTP, correct?
Yeah, and so that was the beginning before we decided on a consultation document went out.
That's correct.
Thank you. I just want to cycle back to Councillor McNulty's questions about the Michael Fowler Centre, and I guess to make a specific plea, can we, if we possibly can we align our decision making to the government processes? Because I think there is a will that we do not want to get ahead of that with another earthquake-prone building. So I guess I'm providing some feedback, but can we do that?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there are obviously implications of uncertainty around that building, and particularly for the building site on the car park and the private developer that we have in an arrangement with to build on that site. So that while that uncertainty is there, it is challenging for us to be able to get certainty around what's going to happen with that site or get anything really built on that site. Equally, there is a pretty key laneway at the bottom of Cuba Street that goes down past the side of the Town Hall and the MFC, and having clarity on exactly how that laneway should be finished, so that we get that beautiful flow of folk coming down from Cuba Street into Ngākau and across to the wharf, etc. Was obviously it leaves uncertainty there around that as well. So I think we should be keeping a very close eye on obviously what the government is doing in terms of changing any regulations or requirements around earthquake-prone buildings. And we'll certainly be working closely with our engineers to make sure we stay across that. And I think, as you know, Liam, I believe, is on the review panel, so we'll have plenty of information about how that's going.
Thank you. And I've just got one final one, but when it was sort of prompted when you talked about the sort of legal liabilities of the engineers that we've got contracted to work with us, because we heard, and I'm very grateful for them giving their time, but engineers who are not contracted with us and come and share their thoughts about what we should do, they don't have any legal liability in terms of the advice they're giving. And
that's correct. That's absolutely correct, yes.
Thank you.
Just before I go to the next round of questions, can I just confirm we have got until 3 o'clock, is that right?
That's correct. Sorry, I should check with DEM Services.
Yeah, just want to make sure. It's just...
We've got a session at 3 o'clock and we're technically till 2:45, so it's with any discretion from your part to go beyond that.
Okay, so we can't go on till 3. Okay, yeah. No, it's just that there were quite a few more questions, so I didn't want to. Yeah, we'll go to 2. Okay, so Councillor Paddock, you get 2 this time.
James, you said you're looking at demolishing the bridge in next January, not this coming January. So is that still correct?
No. Well, what I was, I think when I was talking to the other night about this, what I was saying is that if we are going to demolish that bridge, the timing of that is quite critical for us to think of a window where we'll have the least impact on the city and its function, and particularly, as Faz pointed out before, Jervois Quay being a emergency priority 1 route. We need to come up with a methodology and do this particular piece of work at a time that has the absolute least impact on that piece of roadway. So in our discussions as a team, one of the best times is actually over the Christmas period because it's very quiet.
So you did very clearly say not this Christmas. So you've changed your mind, just for absolute clarity, just people want to know.
I've not changed my mind, no. I could have been incorrect in how I said that to you, but I said what I meant to say was that a Christmas period is the best time to do it. I didn't need to refer to FARS for the plan.
I think in terms of when we exactly do the demolition or strengthening, whatever the decision is that really depend on the traffic management plans and how we can get them through, get them approved, make sure the businesses are informed and the residents considering that is a city-wide route. So there's a lot of planning attached to the traffic management. So it's very hard to say when we'll be there.
Okay, and can I just quickly ask, we've got 600 buildings, many of them on priority routes. We have got climate change costs coming up. I'm just trying to understand why this bridge is, I know you've given that answer, but there is, and the MFC will cost hundreds and hundreds of millions to rebuild. So just, if you could give some shape around your thinking. Thank you.
I guess that our job really is to explain to you what the risks are and to do the work necessary to provide you the best advice on how to manage those risks, and how you then make decisions on those risks and allocate funding is a decision for council.
Thank you. Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, I just want to... I had a good 3 hours reading top to tail the engineering reports last night, and there seems to be some commentary about there being too many engineers, but then not enough. So my very crude summary of our process that we followed is we had a ground assessment, and I just want to confirm this is correct. That ground assessment then got plugged into a structure evaluation to see how the structure would respond in an earthquake. A comparative NBS rating was generated, albeit that it is not a building, but to give an indication of relative strength. And then that has been peer reviewed by an independent third party yet again to verify. That's basically the process that we've gone through.
That is correct.
Wow, seems shockingly logical. And some net figures that I saw in the reporting as well, just because, again, there's been this perception of $36 million to demolish just a bridge. So, again, confirm these. So the cost of, and these are net of contractor margin like, the cost of demolishing Capital E is $6 million, the cost of demolishing the City to Sea Bridge is $4 million, and the cost of landscaping Capital E is $7 million. Those figures are correct? So that's that headline figure is not just for the bridge, it is for the entire range of structures.
No, and as you know, pedestrian crossings are very expensive too. So the pedestrian crossing is $2 million by itself.
Cool.
Yeah, so there are all these elements involved in what is known as the demolition option.
Cool. Thank you.
Abdul Rahman.
Kia ora, James. And so all this modelling is based on once in 500 years earthquake disaster, right? And once in 1,000 years. Would that change if you model it into once in 500 years? Any of the advice would change?
So the return period, the earthquake return period, which we assess a structure against, is pegged against the importance level of that structure. And these structures, the bridge and Capital E, have both been assessed against an importance level 3, which is a 1 in 1,000 year earthquake return period.
My question is, if you change that into 1 in 500 years, do you think that anything would change from your advice?
I think the ratings would still be below the earthquake-prone threshold, or extremely close to it, but you would be outside of the legislation and the guidelines to which we assess structures.
Leave it there. And my second question is to you, James. And in the consultation paper, it says it will cost from 90 to 120 million to strengthen the whole things. And the agenda item, that figure seems to be absent. Is there any reason for that?
So at the time that we were going for consultation again because we had a lot of time pressures. We didn't have a finalized design of 100% strengthening scheme. We were confident that it's between 90 million to 120 million. Through that process, we worked further on those designs, we refined those designs, we refined our cost estimates, and that's how we ended up on $86 million, which is close to the $90 million solution. However, that $86 million we can increase the strength level of the strengthening scheme or the quality of the design and end up on the 120 million side of the spectrum. But that's why I mentioned this is the cheapest option of the spectrum of designs for the maximum resilience solution for the city-to-sea bridge, capital E, and the seawall.
Can you confirm this one? If we make a decision on after tomorrow, there is likelihood the bridge will be gone by January, February.
I cannot confirm when the bridge is gone because that requires a lot of traffic management planning and consenting, considering it's next to the lagoon. We have to go through a process working with the traffic team. Jerwhisky, again, is a priority route. It's not a simple project. We need to do a lot of planning and figure out when is the best time to actually do the demolition of the bridge structure which sits on top of the road. The structures around it are relatively simple and manageable, but the structure on top of the road can be complex from a traffic management point of view.
Councillor Calvert.
First question, just are there any other reports that you're waiting on that we haven't seen regarding this?
No, that's only the Donning-Thornton report that we are waiting to finalise.
Okay. And look, I know it's not directly connected, but I was just curious in the presentation for you mentioned NZSO aren't moving into Te Matapihi now. What's the reason behind that, or is that?
So NZSO looked at taking half of level 4 of Te Matapihi. But they would need to commit. And that was following Victoria University deciding not to go to level 3 and 4. And in essence, on the assumption that we would be able to offer them similar financial terms and conditions for that space, they were not in a position where they could make that commitment to us. And in essence, in order to stay to schedule, we needed an absolute answer from NZSO by the 29th of November. Otherwise, that would impact our schedule on Te Matapihi.
When you say schedule, what do you mean in terms of having to get tenants, or because you had to configure it to suit NZSO?
Because we would have to do a build for a configuration of fit out, build, etc. for NZSO, correct?
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Free.
Yeah, I'm trying just to clarify in my own mind the reason for the imperative to do something about the bridge. So I understand the connection with strengthening the loading bay wall. With regard to the danger, we're obviously responsible for the public safety. Is it partly because it's hard to actually restrict people's access to the bridge that it becomes more imperative to ensure it's safe? Like, we can't really lock it off like we've done with, the town hall. Is that part of the thinking, that we can't really have an open, publicly accessible, unsafe structure?
I think the bigger problem is the road underneath the bridge that you cannot close.
Okay.
You can't, the bridge has the space on top of it, but also it has the space underneath.
So it's a combination of the two?
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you. That's it from me.
Councillor Foon. Sorry, Deputy Mayor Foon.
Thank you. I just wanted to understand option 3A a little more for the 53 million. Just when has that been made public, and how have people had a chance to respond to that through the consultation?
This is the solution that came out of the consultation. This is what people asked us to investigate further whether we can strengthen capital E just above the limit and the bridge just above the threshold and improve the resilience of these structures. And that's what we did. As soon as this solution came to us, that's what we did. We investigated that, designed it, discussed it with a number of engineers and costed it, and that's the $53.3 million solution.
Okay. Just one more question on process. I guess, what would officers recommend in terms of how would you recommend bringing our other stakeholders, you know, our architect, engineer community along with us?
So what we can do when we finish the design for the square, we can actually have a reference group. The design of the replacement of the bridge, that's a conceptual placeholder that is not finalized. We can create a design reference group, bring quite a lot of these architects on board in advisory role to actually get a consensus in what needs to happen, define the edges of the square better, create, making sure that we maintain some of that amphitheater feeling and the performative aspects of the square, and also improve the connections to the water, accessibility, lighting, safety, greening. It is possible to address all those design issues and bring the architecture community on board. I also had conversation with NZIA and NZILA. We can bring them on board too as formal institution representing architects and landscape architects.
Okay, thank you. One more administrative question. Just everything we've discussed today, will this go up online, the slides, or will it be part of the YouTube? Can we attach it to the talk, to the Kōrero Mai site?
Yes, I believe we can, yes.
Yes? I think that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Could we go back to option 3? Option 3 was assessed under importance level 3, I understand, because it can hold 300 or more people. How much would it cost to restrict the bridge such that would be an importance level 2 bridge, or a lower grade bridge?
I have discussed this with the consenting authority, which they actually confirmed the importance levels building. They believe that regardless of the limitation that we put to the bridge has a significant role in terms of protests, marches, graduations, so on and so forth. So we can actually limit the crowd level manually, but also the other thing is that the bridge sits on top of the priority route. So it become probably a complex debate whether you can bring it to aisle 2 or not is doable, and we can go back to MB and ask for a determination. That takes months and months and months to do that, but it is possible to argue that this should be an aisle 2 and therefore have a better earthquake resilience sticker on it. Doesn't resolve the problems that we're facing.
So, I mean, sorry. So if it's you're saying it's possible to restrict the bridge to not have that capacity, but that doesn't resolve the problem of it having the capacity it does now.
Yeah, and also it doesn't resolve the issue of the priority route underneath. Yeah,
I understand that. So, but my question is, how much would it cost to restrict the capacity so it would be assessed as an IL2 bridge or an IL2 structure? Obviously, in terms of a building, I mean, it hasn't got any legal status as they're outlined, but as a building, it would be assessed under the IL2 standard. How much would that cost?
I think we haven't considered potential.
Sorry, Councillor, can you just repeat your question?
How much would it cost to limit the capacity of the bridge such that it would be assessed as an IL2 structure?
I can't imagine it costs a lot of money to limit the capacity of the bridge, but whether or not that is qualification enough to limit to an IL2 structure, I can't tell you. I'd have to go to MB for that advice.
And the advice you've got is from MB, that it's an IL3 bridge structure?
The advice we have is from our engineers and also from discussions with the consenting authority.
Well, why do you have to go to MB?
Because there is a process where you can, I guess, escalate to them or appeal to them if you have a case for changing that classification. I believe that's correct, Scott. You might be able to correct me if I'm wrong.
And that's a requirement if you've got a bridge that you have to get permission from MB.
It's not specific to a bridge. It's just specific to a structure. If you don't agree with the IL3 assessment, you can take it to the consenting authority first. And if you don't agree with the consenting authority, you can take it to MB. There is a process by which you can do that.
Great. Looks like we've run out of questions, which is very timely. We've got 5 minutes to go. So thank you very much. That was really informative.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.